Hello everyone and welcome to Mountain Lake Journal. I'm Tom Hellick. More than 300 shipwrecks lie on the bottom of Lake Champlain, including some of the very first steamboats in all of North America. Underwater archaeologists have spent years trying to identify the steamboats that are part of this underwater graveyard. And in just the past couple of weeks, a team from Texas A&M University says it has made what it calls a breakthrough discovery. In Shelburne Bay, divers are tracking pieces of Lake Champlain's history. 4 shipwrecks scuttled and forgotten.
We're kind of doing, in a sense, an autopsy.
For 3 years, Kevin Chrisman, a Texas A&M professor, and graduate student Carolyn Kennedy have brought a team of archaeologists to study the remains of these steamboats that date back to the 1830s.
We don't really know how they built the boats, exactly how the machinery worked.
2 weeks ago, they had a breakthrough.
I was in tears, practically. I had to run around and show everyone.
Under one of the boats, a diver found an old broken chisel. On it was the word Phoenix.
Finding a tool with the name on it, it's almost unheard of.
It identified the boat as the Phoenix II, which ran from 1820 to the late 30s.
That says the name of it. After 180 years, especially something made of iron in a working shipyard, that is so near impossible.
The Phoenix II would have ferried passengers between Montreal and New York City.
These were really like our cars, our buses, our trains today.
It's week 3 of diving for the group. The ship's frames are mostly all that's left.
Very cool.
They're piecing together artifacts to try to identify the 4 boats steeped in history that the lake has preserved for nearly 2 centuries.
They're preserved really well because that cold, fresh water is like a fridge.
That fridge holds a treasure, if you ask Kennedy, an ancient steamboat that has called Shelburne Bay home since the days Andrew Jackson was in the White House. And Carolyn Kennedy joins us now. Welcome.
Thank you.
Nice to have you here. You're from the Montreal area.
Yes.
You grew up just south of Montreal, just south of the island in Chateauguay,
right.
Quebec. And you also grew up on Lake Champlain as well. Did you spend summers on Lake Champlain?
That's right. My grandparents, Irene and Stan Roussel, had a place on Lake Champlain, right in Point au Rush, and so right not far from here. And every summer from age 2, I spent several weeks there swimming in the lake. And my grandfather had a sailboat, the Barishois Belle, which we sailed on and spent a lot of time there.
So you fell in love with the lake? I
did.
When did you get interested in studying the lake?
I entered university and I knew I wanted to study something like archaeology, but I hadn't even heard of nautical archaeology when I first started university. And I took a trip out to the Halifax Maritime Museum in Nova Scotia, and they had a great maritime museum, and they had a great setup with an excavation going on the Titanic, and they showed a diver on a grid system underwater, and I couldn't believe that, and I thought, oh my gosh, I'm already doing archaeology. Maybe I could do nautical archaeology. That's so cool. So I went and got my scuba license, and I went on a field school that summer doing nautical archaeology.
And that was in Spain?
That was in Spain, yeah.
When was your first dive on Lake Champlain?
It was the next summer. I saw the Lake Champlain Maritime Museum had a field school that they were hosting. We were diving on the Diamond Island stone boat, which was a canal boat, like a spark went off. And Christopher Sabick, who was running that field school, is now we're working together on these projects. And so it's been really nice to work with him all through that. And I also met Eric Tichenuk, who asked me to volunteer on the Lois McClure, which was going to Montreal, and they needed French translators. I spent 3 summers on board the Lois McClure in the end.
And Lois McClure, a replica schooner that would have sailed on Lake Champlain back in the 1800s.
Yeah.
And now makes trips, goodwill missions all around the lake, down the Hudson Canal, the Erie Canal, and
St. Lawrence River.
St. Lawrence River.
Bit of a circuitous route to get to where I am now, but it was all involved with the Lake Champlain Maritime Museum and nautical archaeology, and we've been tightly knit for the past 5 years.
So you graduated from Concordia
I did.
University. How did you end up at Texas A&M?
Right. Texas A&M has first of all, the oldest nautical archaeology program in the world, and it has the best reputation. And what we're really known for is ship construction. And a lot of other places are known for different aspects of nautical archaeology. There are many, it's such a specialized program already, it's hard to imagine it being more specialized. But really, ship construction is where Texas A&M's nautical program excels.
And so you examine how they were built,
Exactly.
the materials they used, and how they were
Put together. Yeah, and it's so specified that it's almost ridiculous to talk about. But we're looking at a very specific set of types of boats, which is steamboats on Lake Champlain, and we're looking specifically at steamboats built prior to 1850.
Tell us a little bit about the history of those boats.
Up until the 1800s, the fastest way to travel around the Champlain Valley would have been a horse and buggy on the terrible roads, and obviously, you being from the area know about the mountains. There's a lot of mountains.
Yeah.
And then other than that, it would have been sailboats, which would have been great. The lake was a really, really good highway to use between Montreal and New York City. 120 miles long, kind of cut that trip about in half, and then you get the Hudson River and you continue along the water. But sailboats are unreliable. If you don't have wind, you don't move. And so when Robert Fulton launched his steamboat, the Clermont, on the Hudson River in 1807, it was the first time that a boat was run commercially, successfully, and carrying passengers. And it was the first time that passengers could basically rely on getting to a place at a certain time ever in North America. You couldn't rely on that before. And so in 1807, he built this boat, and 2 years later, Lake Champlain actually had the second steamboat in the world, the Vermont, in 1809. So they are a huge part of North American history, steamboats and steamboat transportation. And so by 1820, when the Phoenix II was built, this was the fifth steamboat on Lake Champlain. And it ran fast. It was running at 8 miles per hour, which was really fast it was a lot faster than any other way they had to get around then. And it ran for 17 years, which was a long time for a wooden boat on Lake Champlain. They tend to not last much longer than 10 years or so.
And for passengers getting from Montreal to New York City, this was the fastest, easiest way to go. They could get from Saint-Jean-sur-Richelieu
Right.
to Whitehall, New York, the southern tip of the lake, in about 12 hours?
Yeah, well, it depends. Again, they were increasing the speeds all the way through, so every time you got a new steamboat, you could get there a little faster. The Phoenix II was about 15 hours when it started,
Okay.
and I believe by the end of its career, it may have reduced to 12. But then when Burlington and Whitehall, the other two wrecks that we have in this Shelburne shipyard, 1837 and 1838, those were 15 miles per hour.
So along with diving to understand the construction, you were trying to identify them?
It's like a forensic examination of basically the skeletons of these boats. We often refer to the hulls as the skeletons. They have the ribs, known colloquially, we call them the frames specifically. They look like ribs of a human, and then we have like the backbone, the spine is the keel. And looking at those and the way those were put together and the sizes of those and all of that, that is all information that we can use to identify those wrecks.
Let's talk a little bit
Sure.
about the discovery this year. Did you have a pretty good idea this was the Phoenix II that you were examining?
Coming in this year, yeah, we were 90% sure it was the Phoenix II. However, just before we came to do the field season this year, I had gone to a conference and I had presented this, and I said during my presentation, we'll probably never know for sure.
And then a matter of just a few days or weeks
Yeah, it was
later?
a week and a half, exactly.
So when you're on these dives, you're always looking for artifacts. And was this a complete surprise discovering what you did?
Actually, yeah. So going into studying these wrecks, because it was a shipyard and because everything had been pulled out easily, they're in 6 feet of water. You can just jump down and grab anything. We didn't expect to find anything valuable. We got a couple of volunteers, so we had a couple more people to do dives than we thought we would, and so we were a little bit more ambitious once we got to the site, and we decided to move some of the rocks, which this thing is covered in rocks. When they scuttled it, they made it sink by piling rocks into it. And so Dan Bishop, who's our volunteer Vermonter, has been with us for the past 3 years. He came in and he was moving the smaller rocks, and he finally looked and found this cache of tools. They're probably broken tools that had just been abandoned in the bilge. And he picked them up, just grabbed them all, and brought them up to the dock where I was sitting next to a tarp, and put them up on the tarp, and I looked at them, and this is great. Like I said, we weren't expecting to find anything, so anything we find is really cool. Tools, examples of tools from the 1820s, fantastic. And Alex, our artifact guy from Texas A&M, he was sitting right next to me, so I handed him the chisel to tag and bag, and I'm gonna take it home to look at it. He worked on it a little bit, and rubbing it with his thumb, and just getting the water off and the muck off, and he kind of looks at it. Yep, says Phoenix. Like that, deadpan, has no emotion. So I turned it around to him and I grabbed it out of his hand and I was like, no way, you gotta be kidding me. It was a big moment. It was a really big moment. You would never imagine, first of all, to find anything with a name on it. Nevertheless, definitely not a chisel. A chisel of all things, to have a name of the boat that it's on. Ridiculous, but really exciting.
Incredible. And for you, is that one of those moments where you're just going to chill, like, I can't
Oh my
believe
God,
this?
yeah, the whole day. I mean, Chris Sabick from the museum was making fun of me for like the next 3 days. I'd come into the site with a big smile on my face every day, beaming, just beaming. Yeah, really was not expecting to find something like that. But very happy we did.
It helps
Yeah,
solve
it sure
the mystery.
does. It sure does. And now we, know as a fact that is indeed the Phoenix 2.
How rare of a discovery is this?
Well, I don't know numbers off the top of my head, but it was a great moment when we were, the night before we started research. A bunch of us were watching National Treasure, as you may have seen, and we were all laughing at the point where they find the Charlotte, and Nicolas Cage has his metal detector and it beeps, and he sprays some water on the ice, and the name Charlotte is perfectly positioned, sitting upright on the bell at the surface of the ice. And it's such a ridiculous moment that we were all giggling. That's how rare it is. It doesn't happen.